Hello again, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for this Saturday's edition of Alaska Weather on the 13th day of February 2021. I'm Dave Percy, meteorologist with the National Weather Service. I'll be hosting today's show. Up first on the hazardous weather graphics here. Actually, today would be called the no hazardous weather graphics because there isn't any hazards highlighted. No watches, warnings, or advisories out anywhere around the state here for the next day or so. Northern interior looking really good. Arctic coast Aleutians, no big storms of any kind expected. Just kind of a large lingering low out in the Aleutians for the next couple of days. And on the satellite image, you can see a band of cloud associated with a low that's coming up, moving across the eastern Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula into the southeast Bering Sea, bringing areas of moderate rainfall and wet snow in some cases, along with pretty gusty winds, fairly strong wind gusts to the area there as that moved up today. But the front elongating eastward, wave there forming, or another low center pushing eastward with a strong jet that's well to the south of the state of Alaska, stretching that frontal boundary out, trying to get up to Kodiak Island, brought a little bit of moisture to the southwest part of the island. Actually, some light snow today, light wet snow, Kodiak State Airport, totaled to about 1/100th of an inch water equivalent. So not much accumulation there. And temperatures in the mid-30s, a little breezy. And some clouds moving up to the southern Kenai Peninsula. As you can see, they're kind of moving northwestward there, up across Kachemak Bay, Kamishak Bay, into the Alaska Range, southwest interior, seeing some variable cloudiness today. And then some light snow areas of St. Lawrence Island and the Seward Peninsula there with that weak disturbance between the Bering Strait and St. Lawrence Island. And then some cloudiness up over the northwest interior. Pretty gusty winds with that low center kicking the gradient up enough for winds gusts as high as 70 miles per hour in the Lisburn Hills, western Alaska Range, the long mountain areas there. That higher elevation, they're about, I believe, 3,500 feet up. Lighter winds, though, at Point Hope, gusting about 35, maybe 40 miles an hour. And Point Lacey, 30-mile-an-hour wind gusts out of the east-northeast. Otherwise, kind of breezy on the eastern Arctic coast as well, with gusts about 30 miles an hour. I believe that was at Dead Horse today. And otherwise, the interior, pretty much light, variable clouds, some flurries scattered around, nothing significant. And some breezy areas, Delta Junction, seeing winds gusting 45 miles an hour out of the east today. And also, some of the higher elevations seeing 20 to 25 mile per hour winds in gusts over the interior. Otherwise, the southwest coast starting to pick the winds up. Cape Newenham, 40 to 50 mile an hour wind gusts, and the strongest winds were back over the Alaska Peninsula and the eastern Aleutians today, with the heaviest rainfall amounts. 24-hour amount at Unalaska, about 1 2/10 of an inch of rainfall there, some of which may have fallen as snow. But that's kind of a narrow area again, like it was last weekend. By contrast, Accoon Island, or Cold Bay had only 1/100th of an inch, and then False Pass had about 6/100ths of an inch. But winds was more of a wind producer and precip producer, with Cold Bay and Accoon Island both reporting peak wind gusts 67 miles per hour this afternoon. Unalaska, 60 miles an hour. And Nikolsky had a peak wind gusts earlier today of 70 miles per hour. And those winds pushing up toward the Pribilofs, winds now kicking up over 50 miles an hour in gusts at St. George Island. And again, starting to, as I mentioned, increase along the southwest coast there, especially the more windy prone area of Cape Newenham. Otherwise, you can see pretty nice there across the southeast coast. A lot of clearing, just a few clouds, and the interior basically dry. On the chart, there's those clouds in over the southern panhandle. High pressure becoming less significant and slowly weakening over western Canada, but holding and keeping its influence over the eastern interior, central interior areas. Areas of gusty winds, as I mentioned, on the western Arctic coast to about Point Hope, but areas of snow too, quite light, nothing more than most a quarter of an inch in some areas there, and into the southwest mountains, and precipitation really having trouble getting up into Kodiak Island, and just really clouds into southern Cook Inlet. Could be some flurries down there, but nothing very significant at all. And then that 954 millibar low, that's what brought those strong winds to the eastern Aleutians, the Alaska Peninsula today, and currently bringing the increase in the wind to the Pribilof Islands, I mentioned, gusting up toward 55 miles an hour now at St. George. And for tonight, that low center will track just north of the Aleutian chain there, and weaken to a little bit to 965 millibars, but it'll stay windy, but not quite as windy for the eastern Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula, and rain mixed with snow, pretty steady throughout the night tonight, and then wind and snow trying to increase along the southwest coast there from Nunivak Island on into Bristol Bay, and moisture chances continue to increase on the southern Kenai Peninsula, up into western Prince William Sound and along the eastern slopes of the western Alaska Range, especially the southern part of the Alaska Range. Otherwise, the interior stays variably cloudy to mostly clear with breezy, but not too bad on the winds. It'll be windier up along the western Brooks Range out to the western Arctic coast again, as you can see with the tighter gradient. And a weak trough brings some flurries and fog into the central north slope back to the eastern Arctic coast, with a trough extending from the main low center that's up there north of Banks Island in the Arctic. Otherwise, high pressure holding over northwest Canada there, but continues to slowly weaken. A couple of centers, and really not much of a gradient now, so winds are going to be distinctly lighter over the southeast coast the next couple of days. And moisture chances trying to increase there on the central and south coast of the Panhandle, Dixon Entrance, as well as the North Gulf Coast, trying to spread some snow up, possibly Montague Island, southern Prince William Sound. Otherwise, for tomorrow, that whole front washes out. A couple of weak low centers there over the southern Gulf of Alaska, actually from west-southwest of the Queen Charlottes, and then that's actually south of the Gulf of Alaska, there southeast of Kodiak Island, kind of an elongated trough there with a couple of weak circulations. A chance of moisture over the southern southeast coast, and then probably losing the clouds in the central Panhandle. Stays fair and mostly clear to the north, but not too bad on the winds. And fair over the interior once again, with chance of rain or snow along the southern coast of the Kenai Peninsula. Kind of damp and unsettled Kodiak Island, but wind's not a problem. Stays breezy for the Fox Islands. That low stuck near Atka Island, 968 millibars, and trough spinning up around that center from north to south over the western Aleutians, bringing surges of colder air and back into the snow for the western Aleutians, and then milder conditions on the east side of the low center from south to north with the flow, and showery for the Pribilofs, and some snow for the southwest coast. And for the outlook on Monday, that low center tracks eastward a little bit there, just north of the Aleutian chain, and really doesn't weaken much, still at 979 millibars, with the rain and snow and gusty winds all around the center, actually now spreading up into the St. Lawrence Island area for some light snow and some increasing winds, also to a lesser extent on the wind into Norton Sound, southern Kenai, or southern Seward Peninsula. There possibly some light snow or snow showers reaching as far north as the Kobuk-Selawik Valley areas. Otherwise, the northern eastern interior staying dry, and more moisture with high pressure about broken down now, so look for increasing clouds, warmer temperatures, and a little bit better chance of moisture North Gulf Coast and the Panhandle. Lows for tonight, though, about 10 in the north to upper 20s along the central and south coast. Still 25 to 30 below in the Copper River Basin, a little below zero in the Susitna Valley, otherwise single number south central Alaska, and lows below zero north of the Alaska Range all the way out to the Arctic coast. And in the lower to mid 30s for the Bering Sea and the Aleutians, upper 30s Kodiak Island. And the highs tomorrow, mid-20s north to mid-30s south of the Panhandle. In the 20s south central Alaska, except mid-30s toward Homer and Seldovia. A shade below zero in the Copper River Basin, and single numbers in the central interior, below zero for the North Slope and Arctic coast. Highs in the single numbers Seward Peninsula and St. Lawrence Island. Mid to upper 30s out over the Aleutians, with lower 40s showing up over the Alaska Peninsula to Kodiak Island. Lows Monday morning, teens, 20s, and 30s for the Panhandle, 20 below for the Copper River Basin, single numbers in T's, south central Alaska, and 15 to 25 below for the northern interior, North Slope, and Arctic coast, and then lows in lower 30s out over the Aleutians.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Flying weather Sunday morning. First graphic here. Some marginal VFR on the north side of the Seward Peninsula, Shishmaref, maybe to Wales, Tin City. IFR north slope, central north slope, and then IFR southern Bering Sea, Pribilofs, and just about all the Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula. On up across southern Kodiak Island, and then eastward right to the south coast of Prince of Wales Island. Marginal VFR up into Prince William Sound, and most of the Kenai Peninsula and the eastern slopes of the western Alaska Range up to about the latitude of roughly Kenai or so, and some IFR into Togiak Bay, marginal into the southwest mountains, otherwise VFR. And for the afternoon, a real narrow band of IFR there from Nunivak Island, across Kuskokwim Bay, down into Bristol Bay, into the southwest mountains there, Auckland and Buckland Mountains, with some IFR now up into Kamishak Bay there, Shelikof Strait, southern Kodiak Island, and then eastward again across to Prince of Wales Island, IFR. Marginal VFR up over the southern third or so of the southeast coast, VFR to the north, interior really nice VFR, and except for the north slope there, got some IFR and a little bit of marginal VFR for the Bering Strait to maybe St. Lawrence Island. And then that's a little more pronounced on Monday, but not all that bad there for St. Lawrence Island into southern Norton Sound. IFR along the southwest coast and across Cape Newenham, Togiak Bay, northern Bristol Bay, Kodiak Island, IFR, and southern Kenai Peninsula, marginal VFR, Prince William Sound, Cook Inlet, into the interior, up to the Alaska Range, and then northwestward to the northwest coast. And then some from the central Arctic coast on down into the upper Tanana Valley, 40-mile country. We've got some marginal VFR scattered around with IFR scattered around and VFR scattered around the area there. And southern Panhandle, IFR now across the south, and then marginal VFR roughly Sitka over toward, call it Petersburg, I guess, and then up to the north. VFR. And for the afternoon on Monday, we've got that area of IFR that I think I skipped over it here, out in the Bering Sea, Pribilofs, central eastern Aleutians for Monday morning, up to the southwest coast. Kind of pulls off the Yukon Delta coast a little bit there Monday afternoon, but still covers Nunivak Island, still covers the Pribilofs, Atka, Unmak, and Unalaska Islands in the IFR zone. Alaska Peninsula, marginal, and then the south side there from about Sand Point up across Kodiak Island, IFR, Kamishak Bay, now IFR spreading into Kachemak Bay and possibly Resurrection Bay as well. Marginal VFR, Prince William Sound, and from, say, Anchor Point northward, VFR across Cook Inlet, Manaskasisitna Valley, and interior, not too bad. For the passes tomorrow, marginal VFR possible on the north entrance of both Anatuvik and Adigan, otherwise VFR. And Lake Clark and Merrill, VFR becoming, or VFR on the eastern entrance, otherwise marginal VFR, and, or I'm sorry, VFR on the western entrance. Rainy, VFR, windy, VFR, and Isabel, VFR holds again, and Mentasta, VFR. Tanita looks good with VFR. Portage, marginal VFR to start, might bounce around to VFR, and then Chilkoot and White, VFR. Freezing levels at the surface there, just north of the Pribilofs, across Bristol Bay, up along the North Gulf Coast, right along the coast of the Panhandle to Dixon Entrance, 2,000 feet, barely reaching the Queen Charlotte. It's not anywhere close to the Aleutians. Icing, kind of that weak band there with a remnants front and a trough there from the just north of the Pribilof, southwest coast to Kodiak Island. Elevated icing threats also for the southern, extreme southern Panhandle, and maybe some scattered light stuff there over the central and eastern Aleutians. Jet stream, not much flow over the state at this elevation. Main jet well to the south. We've got 65 to 70 knot winds there in the eastern Bering Sea, Alaska Peninsula, and at 9,000 feet, a little more of a breeze there around that low in the central Aleutians, 40 to 50 knots there out of the south across the Fox Islands, and then out of the north over the west central Aleutians. Light winds over the interior Panhandle Gulf of Alaska, 3,000 feet. 45 to 50 knot winds at this elevation from Kamishak Bay up across the Yukon Delta, and up to 50 knots there along the northwest coast, Point Hope, Cape Lisburne, and 40 to 55 knot winds around that storm in the Bering Sea. That translates to moderate chop there. Western Brooks Range along mountains to the Point Hope, Cape Lisburne. Narrow band there from Kamishak Bay up into the Yukon River, and then the Alaska Peninsula and eastern Aleutians, moderate chop.
Welcome back to another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. I'm meteorologist Dave Snyder, and joining us once again is Eric Stevens, our good friend from GINA, the Geographic Information Network of Alaska, based up at UAF. And thanks for joining us, Eric. Really appreciate it.
Oh, happy to be here, Dave.
We love to hear about all the fascinating developments, new and old, and how we're using the tools here, especially around Alaska. And I've got to think that, satellite meteorology right now is a fascinating time to be involved in. If we go back to the first satellite, Tyros, back in 1960, I think is when we got some of those first pictures. Weather and meteorology probably changed that day for a whole lot of people, and it's still changing today, right?
Oh, you know it. Satellite imagery is so important, and it's getting better all the time. Yeah. Of course, never perfect, but especially for us in Alaska, where there are other data sets like radars and weather balloons are so thinly spread. Right. The satellite is the great equalizer because the satellite sees everything.
Right.
Yeah. Right. We've got one particular issue in volcanic ash detection.
That's a big deal here. Yeah.
You know it. If you fly an airplane into volcanic ash, your jet engine might just fail. And an airplane without engines is in a world of hurt. Sure. So if there's a volcano that goes off, satellite imagery is the way to track that plume of ash and to tell pilots this is where you need to not be to avoid this ash plume. And there's a phrase out there, what's the difference? What's the difference?
Okay.
Well, it turns out, what we're going to discuss today, that the difference is everything. There's a technique called channel differencing.
Okay.
That if you take one piece of the spectrum of what the satellite detects and a slightly different wavelength of that spectrum, even though those two images might look similar, magical things happen when you subtract one from the other. And they reveal information that was already there, but it was hard to find until you did that subtraction.
That sounds like Nicolas Cage in National Treasure when he's got those fancy glasses and he's flipping one up and back and forth. I mean, is this what we're talking about?
Well, let's go more highbrow and talk Michelangelo.
Oh,
so apparently Michelangelo made some amazing sculpture and someone said, Michael, that's amazing. How did you do it? And Michelangelo's reply allegedly was, well, in that rock, the statue was already in there.
Right.
I just scraped away the unnecessary bits. In satellite meteorology, sometimes there are meteorological features that are in the data, but you can't see it until you combine or difference some of the channels.
Okay.
And we've got a case, good old Pavlov volcano goes off now and then.
Sure.
And you can observe directly a picture of the volcano. Just take it with your iPhone. You can see a volcano going
erupting.
off. Yep. Right. But if you want to get the broad view, we need satellite to do that. Now, there are a couple of wavelengths that we can look at. So what's a wavelength? That's the amount of space between a peak and a valley and another peak in a certain part of the electromagnetic spectrum. We're going to look at 12 micron wavelength and 10.8 micron wavelength.
What is a micron?
So what's a micron? Yeah, we're getting into the geek department now. A micron is a unit of length, and it is quite tiny. We're looking at what's called long wave wavelengths.
Okay.
But it takes 25,000 of these microns to make an inch. A human blood cell is about 5 microns across. So when we're talking about 12 micron imagery as allegedly long wave, well, that's relative.
Pretty short for light.
Yeah, it's other part of the, it's just an expression for the spectrum there.
Okay.
So we can look at a 12 micron image, say a satellite image. At 12 microns, we're seeing a heat signature here, really, and the way this color enhancement works is the yellow and the red stuff is high cold clouds down here over the Gulf of Alaska into South Central. And if you were asked, where do you find the volcanic ash plume in this image?
Hey, where do you find the volcanic plume in this image?
It's hard to do. I'm not sure I could find it. If you were to look at this image and just say, show me what jumps out at you here, I'd say, well, nothing really. Well, let's look. So 12 micron doesn't help us. Let's look at 10.8 microns.
All right.
All right, look at that. It's practically the same image. So where's this volcanic ash? Can't find it at 12 microns, can't really see it at 10.8, but when we subtract one channel from the other, magically, the plume appears. The color enhancement here highlights the ash in blue.
Wow.
The information was already there, but we couldn't find it until we subtracted one channel from another.
Very interesting.
It's almost magical. Similarly, let's say you're looking for fog up on the North Slope. It's kind of a foggy neighborhood.
Sure.
In 11 micron and 3.9 micron, we've got a 3.9 micron image here. it's a big fuzzy blur over Barrow. We can't see where the fog is. But the information is lurking in there waiting for us to reveal it. All we have to do is find that difference between the 11 micron and the 3.9, and then this image becomes this image, and the fog bank jumps right out, and you can see it up there at Barrow. Now, you got to choose the right tool for the job.
Sure.
Like they say, you open your toolbox, all kinds of stuff in there. What do we need for this particular task? If you want to find volcanic ash, we look at 12 and 10.8 micron, find that difference. If you want to find fog, we'll look at 11 and 3.9 micron, find that difference. It's great, different tools for different jobs. Of course, there's always caveats and gotchas, but this fog procedure, it only works at night, because when the sun comes up, it gets in the way. So every product has its strengths and limitations, and in meteorology, the challenge is using the right tool for the right job, and these are some of those tools.
And discovery is still happening, even with meteorology. The weather's been around for a long time, but the tools that are being developed to understand the meteorology is fascinating and still very new science.
It's such a young science. We've come so far. I'm getting old enough now that I can literally say that, you know, when I was a boy, we didn't have this kind of thing. And there's new things happening all the time. New satellites will be launched in coming years that will have better instruments than ever before. It's an exciting time, and this is so helpful for Alaska because satellites help fill in the gaps between other ways of observing the weather. Satellites, the great equalizer for Alaska.
Yeah, and help so many people stay safe in so many ways every day up here in the last frontier.
Yeah, that's what it's all about, protecting lives and property.
Well, thank you so much for joining us again, Eric. We love to hear about this fascinating information, and boy, it just makes me want to go watch satellite pictures all day. So hopefully we're inspiring more people to do the same thing, and just be curious. It's a wonderful thing. Thanks for joining us for another edition of Alaska Weather Facts, and we'll see you next time.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Today's sea ice analysis, not a lot different from yesterday. Still, due to the east-northeast winds, area of thinner ice right along the southwest coast and the southwest side of Nunivak Island, south side St. Lawrence Island, and heavier ice in northeast Bristol Bay, Togiak Bay not so heavy, and Cook Inlet still got ice now a fair ways south of the Forelands. And the coastal water forecasts looking like this for tomorrow. Small craft advisories all along the outer coastline from the east, 25 knots, except Prince of Wales Island coastline marine area there. They'll be out of the east at 30 knots, seas 12 feet, and southeast 20 for Clarence Strait, north 20 Stevens Passage, and Lynn Canal Glacier Bay, all north at 20 knots, and 4-foot seas. On Monday, lighter winds out of the west 20 knots for most of the outer coastline there with seas 13 to 16 feet. Eastern North Gulf Coast, south 15, 13 to 15 foot seas though remain. And north 15 Lynn Canal with 3-foot seas. Southeast 15 Stevens Passage, southwest 15 for Clarence Strait. Prince William Sound, light northeast breeze tomorrow, 15 knots, seas at about 3 feet. Small craft advisories for the North Gulf Coast, east winds 30 knots, 14-foot seas. And nudge it up to minimum gales there for the Barren Islands and Kamishak Bay for east-northeast winds at 35 knots, north 30 knots. Good for small craft advisories for southern Cook Inlet. Brisk wind advisories, northern Cook Inlet, northeast at 25. And those will fall back to about 10 knots north of the Forelands on Monday. Southern Cook Inlet and Kamishak Bay, 20-knot winds in the forecast with 6 to 7 foot seas. Barren Islands, small craft advisories, south at 25. East 25 for the western North Gulf Coast and southeast 20 for the eastern North Gulf Coast with 12-foot seas the entire way and 10 knots out of the northeast for Prince William Sound with slight seas. Kodiak Island starting with Shelikof Strait east at 30 knots, otherwise lighter for the east side of Kodiak Falknak Islands, 20 knots from the south. And then small craft advisories, Castle Cape to Sitkinak, south 25. Gale warnings for the Alaska Peninsula for south winds at 35 knots. Bristol Bay, east winds, 35 knots. And then for Monday, those fall back to small craft advisory levels there for Bristol Bay, out of the east, 25 knots. And then south to southeast winds at 30 knots for the Alaska Peninsula. 25-knot winds continue from the south up to Sitkinak and Kodiak Island, 15 to 20-knot winds out of the south with 4 to 12-foot seas. On Alaska Island tomorrow, south-southeast, 30 to 40 knots, strongest on the Pacific side of the island there. Small craft advisories for Unmac Island for south-southwest winds 25 knots. Northeast 25 to 30 knots, Adak and Atka. Amchitka north at 30. Kiska, Shimei, and Attu northeast 25. And for Monday for Shimei, Attu, and Kiska, northwest 30 knots. Gale warnings Amchitka Island, northwest at 35 with seas near 20 feet. West-northwest at 30 knots, Adak and Atka. Unmac Island, west-southwest 20 to 25 knots. Unalaska Island, south to southwest at 25 to 30 knots. For the southwest coast, we've got full gales going for the Kuskokwim Delta coast out of the east at 40 knots. Northeast winds 40 knots. For the Pribilof, St. Matthew Island, Yukon Delta coast, St. Lawrence Island, winds will be northeast at 30 knots for brisk wind advisories in those areas. North 30 knots for the St. Lawrence Island area on Monday with 25-knot winds for the southwest coast from the east-northeast. Gales continue for St. Matthew Island for 35-knot northeast winds, 30 knots out of the northeast for the Pribilofs. And for the central and eastern Beaufort Sea coast, light winds tomorrow, north to northeast at about 10 knots or so. And then roughly around Point Lay, 25-knot winds for brisk wind advisories. Gale warnings, Cape Beaufort to Cape Thompson, northeast 30. Cape Thompson to Wales, north at 30 knots. And for Monday, Wales to Cape Thompson, north 30, and then 30-knot winds from the northeast up to Cape Beaufort, and then 20-knot winds there on the western Arctic coast, central and east side, staying light out of the north at 10 knots. For tonight, look for some flurries from the central north slope, fog and flurries, light amounts, no significant accumulation expected, nothing more than an inch, if that, half an inch or less. And a little breezy there continues on the west side there, especially the higher elevations of the western Brooks Range. And then a weakening front spreads increasing clouds and moisture into the Bristol Bay area, southern Cook Inlet, Kenai Peninsula, trying to push into the North Gulf Coast, trying to push into the Panhandle. And then for Sunday, that really washes out, just a risk of some moisture over the southern Panhandle, mostly dry in the interior. And that big low lingers out there in the Aleutians through Monday afternoon into the evening hours.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.